The Maya civilization, which flourished in Mesoamerica for over 2 millennia, stands as one of the most remarkable and enigmatic societies in human history. Spanning regions that now include southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador, the Maya developed a sophisticated culture renowned for its achievements in architecture, astronomy, mathematics, and written language. Monumental cities like Ticalcopan and Palenque showcase intricately carved stone temples, expansive plazas, and towering pyramids, evidence of a civilization capable of remarkable engineering and urban planning. The Maya were not merely builders, they were keen observers of the cosmos. Their calendars, based on meticulous astronomical calculations, allowed them to predict solar and lunar events with astounding accuracy. They developed the concept of zero, independently facilitating complex mathematical operations essential for their calendrical and astronomical systems. Their hieroglyphic writing, carved into stone monuments and recorded on codices, provides insight into political, religious, and social practices, reflecting a society deeply conscious of history, lineage, and cosmology. Agriculture formed the backbone of Maya sustenance and economic stability. Corn, beans, squash, and cacao were cultivated with precision, employing techniques such as terracing and raised fields to maximize yield in diverse environments. Water management through reservoirs and canals allowed the Maya to support dense populations in areas with highly variable rainfall. The integration of environmental adaptation with societal organization demonstrates a civilization capable of advanced planning engineering and resource management long before European contact. Yet despite these remarkable achievements, the Maya civilization experienced dramatic decline during the so-called Classic Collapse between the 8th and 10th centuries CE. Once thriving cities were abandoned, monumental construction halted, and populations decreased significantly. The reasons for this decline remain a topic of intense scholarly debate, with theories ranging from environmental catastrophe to social upheaval. Understanding the Maya collapse is not merely an academic exercise. It challenges assumptions about the resilience of complex societies and offers cautionary insights into the relationship between humans, environment, and governance. The intrigue surrounding the Maya decline has captured the imagination of historians, archaeologists, and the public alike. Numerous theories have emerged, each attempting to reconcile archaeological evidence, climate data, and historical records with the observable disappearance of urban centers and cultural continuity. As we examine these explanations, from warfare and disease to environmental stress and economic instability, a complex picture emerges, suggesting that the Maya collapse was not the result of a single factor, but a convergence of interrelated pressures that tested the limits of one of the most sophisticated civilizations of the ancient world. Evidence of the Maya civilization's decline begins to emerge in the archaeological record during the late Classic period, roughly between the 8th and 9th centuries CE. Cities that had once thrived with bustling marketplaces, grand temples, and expansive plazas began to show signs of abandonment. Structures were left incomplete, monuments remained uncarved, and residential areas were deserted. Sites such as Copan Caracol and Tikal reveal a stark contrast between the height of urban complexity and the sudden halting of construction activities, suggesting a society under significant stress. Population estimates indicate that Maya urban centers, which may have supported hundreds of thousands of inhabitants at their peak, experienced dramatic reductions. Skeletal remains and settlement surveys demonstrate decreased density, increased signs of malnutrition, and evidence of social disruption. The decline was not uniform. Some cities maintained occupation for several additional centuries, while others were rapidly abandoned. This uneven pattern highlights that the collapse was complex and multifaceted, reflecting localized pressures as well as broader regional trends. Several environmental indicators hint at the stressors contributing to this decline. Pollen analysis from lake cores shows fluctuations in vegetation consistent with deforestation and soil degradation, while sediment layers suggest that agricultural terraces and raised fields may have been abandoned or poorly maintained. Such data imply that the Maya faced challenges in sustaining food production, potentially exacerbated by population pressures and climatic variability. Water reservoirs and canal systems show signs of reduced maintenance, indicating that urban infrastructure may have deteriorated as political and social cohesion weakened. Other early warning signs are visible in Maya art and inscriptions. Stelae from the late Classic period increasingly focus on elite lineage and warfare, rather than civic achievements or communal rituals. Hieroglyphic records reveal intensified conflict between city-states, frequent dynastic struggles, and an emphasis on military victories. This growing preoccupation with warfare alongside environmental and economic stress may have undermined the collaborative networks necessary for managing large urban populations. Taken together, the archaeological and environmental evidence presents a civilization experiencing profound stress before its eventual collapse. Abandoned cities' population decline reduced agricultural productivity, and the increasing prominence of military-focused inscriptions all point to a society under pressure. While the full picture of the Maya collapse remains complex, these early indicators suggest that multiple interacting factors, social, environmental, and political, were already eroding the foundations of what had once been one of the most sophisticated civilizations of the ancient Americas. Traditional explanations for the Maya civilization's decline have often emphasized human conflict and disease as primary factors. Warfare between city-states appears increasingly prevalent in the late Classic period, as evidenced by fortifications, defensive walls, and inscriptions detailing battles. Archaeological surveys reveal signs of violent confrontations, including mass graves, skeletal trauma, and burned structures suggesting that inter-city rivalry and internal strife could have disrupted political stability, trade networks, and agricultural production. In addition to warfare, disease may have played a significant role in population decline. The dense urban centers of the Maya would have facilitated the spread of infectious diseases, particularly in combination with malnutrition and environmental stress. While direct evidence of epidemic outbreaks is limited, skeletal remains exhibit signs of chronic illness, malnutrition, and stress markers consistent with weakened immunity. In a society dependent on intensive agriculture and complex trade networks, even a localized epidemic could have cascading effects, reducing labor availability, disrupting food production, and undermining social cohesion. Political instability and dynastic conflicts also contributed to societal stress. Many Maya city-states were governed by hereditary rulers, and succession disputes could escalate into broader conflicts. Stelae and inscriptions from the period frequently highlight shifts in power, violent overthrows, and attempts to legitimize rulership through ritualized displays of dominance. Such internal turbulence likely strained resources, diverted attention from public works, and eroded centralized authority, making communities more vulnerable to environmental and economic shocks. Trade disruptions further compounded these pressures. Maya cities were highly interconnected through extensive trade networks, exchanging goods such as obsidian, jade, cacao, and textiles. Warfare, disease, and political instability could interrupt these networks, leading to shortages of essential resources and materials. Agricultural surplus management would have been affected, limiting food security and exacerbating social tensions. The combination of military conflict, political fragmentation, and disrupted trade may have created a feedback loop, accelerating decline across the region. While these classical explanations, warfare, disease, and internal conflict, provide plausible mechanisms for societal collapse, they are unlikely to account for the full complexity of the Maya decline. Not all cities experienced intense warfare or disease outbreaks simultaneously, and some urban centers survived longer than others. Instead, these human-centered factors likely interacted with environmental pressures, resource limitations, and climatic variability, creating a multifactorial scenario in which no single cause fully explains the collapse. Understanding the interplay between these elements is essential to forming a comprehensive picture of the Maya civilization's decline, revealing a society that faced challenges far greater than any one explanation can capture. In recent decades, environmental scientists and paleoclimatologists have turned their attention to the role of climate in the collapse of the Maya civilization. Sediment cores from lakes and wetlands across the Maya lowlands provide compelling evidence that the region experienced prolonged periods of drought during the late Classic period, roughly between 800 and 1000 CE. Layers of silt pollen and isotopic signatures reveal declines in precipitation, decreased water levels in lakes and reservoirs, and shifts in vegetation patterns consistent with sustained aridity. These prolonged droughts would have placed extraordinary stress on an agrarian society, dependent on maize, beans, and squash, as well as complex water management systems, including reservoirs, canals, and terraces. Reduced rainfall would have diminished crop yields, created food shortages, and undermined the stability of densely populated urban centers. Archaeological evidence suggests that some reservoirs and irrigation networks fell into disrepair during this period, indicating that environmental stress was exacerbated by the breakdown of political and social structures necessary for their maintenance. The severity of these droughts is further corroborated by the stable isotope analysis of stalagmites and sedimentary deposits, which shows fluctuations in oxygen and carbon isotopes consistent with extended dry periods. These findings suggest that multiple sequential drought events occurred rather than isolated dry spells, meaning that the Maya faced repeated challenges to food and water security over decades. The cumulative effects of these events could have overwhelmed local agricultural systems, creating conditions that contributed directly to population decline, urban abandonment, and social upheaval. Environmental stress may have also intensified competition between city-states for remaining resources. Evidence from burned agricultural terraces and defensive fortifications implies that some Maya polities responded to resource scarcity with increased warfare, while others may have faced internal unrest as elites struggled to manage dwindling food and water supplies. This interaction between climatic stress and social conflict paints a more nuanced picture of the collapse where environmental pressures did not act in isolation, but amplified existing vulnerabilities within Maya society. Moreover, dendrochronology and sediment studies reveal that these droughts were regionally widespread, affecting both the northern and southern lowlands. The simultaneous stress across multiple urban centers would have limited the ability of populations to migrate or adapt by relocating, forcing communities to contend with scarcity in place. This context suggests that environmental degradation was a pervasive and persistent factor, capable of undermining the stability of even the most sophisticated urban centers in the Maya world. The climate hypothesis does not act alone, but interacts with human factors such as overpopulation, deforestation, soil depletion, and political instability. The combination of environmental extremes and societal pressures likely created a tipping point wherein the capacity of cities to maintain food security, social cohesion, and governance was critically compromised. In this view, the Maya collapse emerges as a multifactorial event with climate acting as a decisive amplifying force that exposed vulnerabilities within a complex and interdependent civilization. Archaeological investigations have provided substantial evidence supporting the climate-related explanations for the Maya collapse. Soil analysis across the Maya lowlands reveals significant erosion and nutrient depletion, suggesting that intensive agriculture over centuries may have degraded the land. Terraced fields once used to maximize arable land show signs of abandonment with sediment layers indicating both overuse and diminished productivity. These environmental pressures combined with population demands would have strained food production, contributing to social instability. Pollen studies extracted from lake and wetland cores further illuminate these changes. A marked decline in maize and other cultivated species corresponds with increases in pollen from wild grasses and shrubs, indicating reduced agricultural activity during periods of prolonged drought. This suggests that traditional farming practices were insufficient to sustain dense populations under changing climatic conditions. Simultaneously, sedimentation patterns show periods of heavy erosion, consistent with deforestation for construction fuel and farmland, highlighting the cumulative impact of human activity on environmental resilience. Water management systems, a hallmark of Maya ingenuity, also provide clues. Reservoirs, canals, and terraces were meticulously engineered to capture and distribute water in an environment with highly variable rainfall. Archaeological evidence shows that many of these systems fell into disrepair during the collapse, leading to reduced water availability and heightened vulnerability to drought. Isotopic studies of water and sediment cores reveal shifts in rainfall patterns, confirming that these failures coincided with extended dry periods. The loss of reliable water infrastructure would have intensified agricultural stress and contributed to urban abandonment. Isotope analysis from stalagmites, lake sediments, and human remains further corroborates the timing and severity of climatic events. Changes in oxygen and carbon isotope ratios indicate repeated drought cycles during the late Classic period, affecting both northern and southern Maya lowlands. These data suggest that droughts were not isolated incidents but persistent phenomena, exerting prolonged pressure on food and water resources, reinforcing the connection between environmental stress and societal disruption. Taken together, the soil degradation, pollen evidence, reservoir decay, and isotopic data provide a multidimensional view of the pressures facing Maya society. They illustrate a civilization struggling to maintain agricultural and hydrological systems under increasingly hostile conditions. By integrating archaeological and scientific findings, researchers can reconstruct the environmental context of the Maya collapse, revealing that climatic stress was a critical, quantifiable factor that, when combined with social and political vulnerabilities, contributed decisively to the decline of one of the most sophisticated civilizations of the ancient Americas. Beyond environmental challenges, social and economic pressures played a critical role in the collapse of the Maya civilization. The Maya political system consisted of numerous city-states, each ruled by hereditary kings or elites, whose authority depended on religious legitimacy, military power, and control over resources. This decentralized structure, while effective during periods of stability, became a liability when environmental and demographic pressures intensified. Competition for arable land-water resources and trade goods often escalated into warfare, undermining regional cooperation and weakening the social fabric. Resource management was another central challenge. As populations grew, demands on farmland water reservoirs and forests increased dramatically. Intensive agriculture and deforestation likely led to soil depletion erosion and reduced water retention, compounding the effects of prolonged drought. Archaeological surveys show evidence of abandoned terraces, deteriorated irrigation systems, and reduced construction of communal infrastructure, indicating that the capacity for centralized management of essential resources had diminished. These disruptions would have directly affected food security, leading to malnutrition, social unrest, and population decline. Internal conflict further strained Maya society. Inscriptions and stelae reveal frequent warfare between city-state succession disputes and elite competition, suggesting that political instability was widespread. Such conflicts would have diverted labor away from agricultural production and maintenance of essential infrastructure. Increased militarization also likely disrupted trade networks, leading to shortages of critical materials such as obsidian, jade, and salt. Economic fragmentation may have compounded social stress, making it difficult for communities to respond effectively to environmental shocks. The intersection of social, economic, and environmental factors created a feedback loop of instability. Environmental stress heightened competition for resources, which intensified conflict, leading to further disruption of agriculture and trade. Populations became vulnerable to famine, disease, and migration pressures. Once cohesive urban centers were increasingly abandoned, and political authority fragmented, reducing the ability of communities to coordinate collective responses. This complex interplay illustrates that the Maya collapse cannot be attributed to a single cause. Rather, it was the result of multiple interacting pressures that eroded the resilience of society over several generations. Ultimately, these social and economic dynamics highlight the fragility of even sophisticated civilizations when confronted with compounded stressors. The Maya, despite their technological ingenuity, architectural mastery, and astronomical knowledge, were not immune to the consequences of mismanaged resources, internal conflict, and political fragmentation. Understanding these factors provides critical context for interpreting archaeological evidence, revealing that the decline of the Maya civilization was a multidimensional event shaped by the interplay of human, environmental, and economic forces. Taken together, the archaeological, environmental, and social evidence paints a comprehensive picture of the decline of the Maya civilization as a complex, multifactorial process. Prolonged droughts revealed through sediment cores, isotopic analysis, and pollen studies created persistent stress on agricultural systems, leading to crop failures and water scarcity. These environmental pressures were amplified by soil degradation, deforestation, and overuse of terraces, highlighting the vulnerability of even highly sophisticated farming practices in the face of climatic extremes. Simultaneously, social and political factors exacerbated the crisis. Internal conflict warfare between city-state succession disputes and elite competition strained the ability of communities to manage resources effectively. Disrupted trade networks reduced food security, and weakening governance structures created feedback loops that intensified societal instability. Urban centers were abandoned, infrastructure deteriorated, and populations declined, illustrating how intertwined environmental and social pressures can undermine complex civilizations. While no single factor can fully explain the Maya collapse, the convergence of climate stress, resource mismanagement, political fragmentation, and social upheaval provides the most plausible framework. Yet questions remain: how did regional variations influence the timing of decline? Were there adaptive strategies that succeeded in certain locales? The Maya collapse offers a profound lesson in the fragility of human societies, demonstrating that even advanced civilizations are vulnerable when natural, social, and political challenges converge.